Good afternoon, everybody. I'm your host, John. Thank you so much for tuning in our first podcast, released a couple of weeks ago. We're still looking for names for that, so if you could suggest, comment down below or email us, rkkcpch@gmail.com. Just suggestions on what we should title this. We were in between
Arche speaks and don't get it twisted.
Yeah, I don't know if I like any of those things.
Arche speaks is something that I think people have suggested kind of, in passing, and then don't get it twisted is something that I know I say a lot, and so I think it was just a comment that somebody made. So those are our choices for now. We'll see how they go. But again, if you are watching this on YouTube, comment below. We'll take those suggestions, or if you have anything else, email us, and then we'll
because the whole point of this podcast is provide a platform in which us as a ministry, Arche Ministries, would be able to talk about prevalent issues for all age groups, all life stages, and whatnot. And so today is going to be one of those days where we tackle a couple big issues. But I'd love to introduce our guests today. We have Richard Kang on my left, junior from UT Dallas. How are you feeling today, sir?
Good, I guess. I don't know. Okay.
Doing okay? All right, and then to my corner, we have sophomore from UT, Eunice Choi. How are you feeling?
Pretty good.
All right. And obviously in front of me, we got, Pastor.
Yeah, and then Chris, engineering. Thanks.
Yeah. Eating Cheetos. Anyways, the big topic for today is college and future and all of the decisions that kind of lead up to those moments in our lives. And I wanted to open the floor to anybody, if anybody wanted to talk about how should students today, particularly the young kids that are getting ready for college, how should they be preparing for this process through particularly what you guys have learned?
So let me just kind of, ask the first question here, because I think when I think of all of our high school seniors, and you guys were not too long ago there, they got so many different things that they're considering, right? They want to go for different reasons, and they have, parents and majors and future and careers. And so I think one of the first questions that I have is, what were some of the most important things that you guys were considering as you guys made these decisions? Some of the more, the bigger factors. Is it how big of a thing was location? How big of a thing was the money? How big of a thing was the major that you wanted and what you wanted to do? And so just kind of, can you tell us a little bit about your thought process on these things? Because I feel like those things kind of predominantly take the conversation over with a lot of our high school seniors. So if you could just speak a little about that. So what were some of your biggest factors when you were considering school? And maybe even regardless of where you ended up choosing, what were some of the things that you were thinking of as you were thinking about what school to choose? Eunice?
For me, I think it was important to balance thinking about the realistic things of money and location and things like that. Also with with what I wanted from a school and the college, what I wanted to study. And so my first consideration was, am I going to be able to afford going to this school, and am I going to be able to live in this city, which honestly I had no idea whether or not I was going to fit into a city like Austin, but in my mind I thought it'd be great. And so
obviously money's a thing, but let's say money wasn't a thing, right? And you kind of had a choice between, and let's say you got into the kind of schools, but what are some of the things, that were really important to you going in, and how did you kind of narrow those things down?
Outside of just tuition.
Right.
I think when money was out of the picture, I really focused in on the program that the schools offered. So I really wanted to study psychology since my sophomore year of high school. And so I was really excited to, finally be able to learn something I was interested in other than just, the basic math or science classes. I was really interested in social sciences. And so for me, it was an easier choice between the schools that I applied to because UT was known for their psychology program. It's one of the top in the nations. And so once the prospect of me being able to go to UT financially was set, it was a pretty easy decision from there. knowing that the program had a lot of what I wanted to support me, and, like the opportunities that they would provide.
And Richard, for you, what were some of the like biggest things that you were considering?
For me personally, like senior year, my mom told me that she would move to wherever I would go. So like if I were to like say I went to like California or something, that she would follow me a year after. And so yeah, a main priority of like where I chose to go, which was Dallas, was mostly because my mom wanted to go to Dallas, because she for me it was between UTD and U of H, and my mom emphasized that she wanted to get out of Houston, and so that left only UTD on the table, and so I chose Dallas. I went there for a year, or I mean after a year, like she moved up, and so yeah.
Were both of you guys pretty certain about what you wanted to study, and has that remained the same? Because I think that's a big consideration for a lot of people. The program or like the job that they want to do. I know everyone stresses before they do it or before they choose a school, like this is what they want to do. But statistics show that the vast majority of your generation will change majors at least once or twice. So not only you, but even some of your close friends, you feel like people who came in pretty certain about what they were going to study, have they stuck to that? And is that really like the biggest or one of the bigger considerations that you would do again if you had the choice, knowing what you know now?
I mean, for me, like I switched majors, I think like last semester or 2 semesters ago. I was originally finance, but I switched to IT, and they're still underneath business, and so the transition was easy. But I don't know if I started over again. I don't know. Like I feel like it didn't really matter. But then again, like the transition wasn't that hard. Like say if it was like business to like science, and I know that would be like difficult because credits are hard to transfer, and a lot of things like go into that equation. So, but knowing myself, I knew that I wouldn't go into like science or like engineering or anything like that, like health wise, or like I knew I wanted to stay within like business or something along those lines. And so for me, like I don't think it really mattered.
Yeah, I mean, even for Eunice, could you tell us a little bit about your experience with like changing majors or having a different course of action when it comes to your future?
Are you studying the same thing? Are you still studying psychology?
Let's start there.
Are you still, because I know you went in because of the social sciences at UT. Are you still studying
to work in social sciences?
Is that?
Yeah, so I'm still studying psychology right now, but this past summer I decided that I wanted to change course. Instead of going to grad school to pursue a PhD in psychology, I decided I wanted to go into the education field after I graduate. So right now I want to become an elementary teacher after I graduate. So I was someone who thought I would never change my mind about the kind of field I wanted to work in, what I wanted to do, because I just like planning out exactly what I want to do in the future. But I'm really learning that as I get older, it's really important to keep an open mind about, the way your life is going to play out. It's not something that goes to a set plan, but really be open to the opportunities available and really take it as it comes.
Yeah. And I think both of y'all's experiences kind of encompass. I think a lot of maybe our younger people might see that like basically solely based on the school that they go to, solely based on the major that they have, that their future is literally kind of like set in stone. And I think what we've experienced is that there's a flexibility. Just because you change your major doesn't mean that you have to start all the way, like start all over again. And then just because you're set on studying one thing doesn't mean that you are set to become a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. There's flexibility in that. You can study psychology and still be an educator, and you can still study business and do whatever you need to do within there too.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to talk about my own personal experiences, or is that?
Yeah.
I mean, like for me, like I also switched majors, and this was kind of later on, my spring semester of junior year. Came in as like your typical vanilla flavored Asian biology major student, like dreaming to become a doctor, like a large majority of Asian Americans, and then literally 3 semesters before I graduated, I'm like, okay, this isn't for me. And what I really noticed is keeping that open mind and really experiencing the different aspects of healthcare, of how much that I thoroughly enjoyed physical therapy, how much I enjoyed like the patient interaction, and ultimately how God had planned it to be that way, that 3 semesters before I graduate, this would just kind of fall onto my lap. And I was like, God, this is good. I'm gonna trust you and still graduate in 4 years, still graduate, top of my class, and watch as God just made things open up for me as I transitioned to life in Galveston on an island. So
Yeah, so that means all 3 of you have kind of either changed your major or you went in with an idea and then you kind of changed.
It's very
Right.
common.
So now knowing that, because I think, again, a lot of the stress that comes at this stage as a high school senior is what you want to study. I think maybe outside of like engineering, maybe, but even then some engineers have been switched. But, that kind of is a major issue, right? Like that's what they want and that's kind of where they put a lot of focus. Like how big of a thing is that? We're not obviously saying that you shouldn't know what you're studying and you shouldn't do those things, but via your experience now, how big of a role does that play in terms of your college experience and who you are and what things are important? Because college, I think everyone will say, is a very, very important and big time decision that you make. But I don't know. I've always felt, because I'm a pastor, but I went in planning to be a lawyer. I studied sociology. I declared my major at the beginning of my junior year because you didn't have to until your junior year. I basically waited till the last minute. And then, of course, I didn't go to law school and now I'm a pastor. And so, that's my experience. But I've always kind of felt that what you study and therefore where you go based on what you study is one of the more kind of overrated or overemphasized aspects of your college decision. And so kind of how should our younger folks and seniors and juniors and things like that think about these things to really help them? Because like it's a pretty big idea, but and then of course with parents' pressure and things like that, that's a huge deal. And so how could you help them navigate those things, knowing that if you chose a school that doesn't have the major that your parents want, you could obviously really disappoint them, but also at the same time, I think the experiences of the many that I've heard is that what you study is really not even at, I would say, like a top 3 priority by the time you're all said and done. It's like, it's important, but there's so many other things that go into, what college becomes and what you learn from it and how it helps you to become the kind of person that you want to become. So, can you just maybe speak to some of our seniors about some of those things?
I could start with that since I've, graduated from college this past spring. One of the first things that come to mind is this idea that I think a lot of our, parents think about, like, oh man, like you got to go to the best school. You got to go to the Ivy Leagues. You got to go to the, the East Coast, West Coast schools, the ones with a lot of history. And I think, that's something to consider. However, I don't think that's like an ultimate thing. I have had a lot of professors and intellectuals tell me that your diploma is an investment that you make for the future. And so although you may not be going to the Ivy League school, it doesn't mean that school in 10, 15 years will not be will continue to be one of like the quote unquote mediocre schools. So, I graduated from UT Dallas, relatively unknown new undergraduate program. However, within like the last 5 years, and Richard can attest to this, like our school has grown and has matured and flourished. Like our business school is probably one of the best in the state of Texas, if not, the country. And our health and sciences program is really, really good. And the amount of valedictorians that go to UTD is really incredible. But it's something that you've seen happen so recently. And I think a lot of people just look at it on paper and see it as like a small, tiny school within like the Plano-Richardson area, and they completely negate the fact that like it's growing and it's becoming better. Richard, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, like freshman year, I tell people that like, oh, I go to UTD, and like people here in Houston are like, what's that? You know, and I was just like, it's UT Dallas. I don't know, man. But yeah, like definitely over the past couple of years, like I see more and more people coming, and like they've added like so many more buildings now. Like they're completing another science building when they already have like a pretty big one. But yeah, I mean, personally, like I don't know, because like my personal experience of like not really being motivated to go anywhere besides Dallas. I feel like the location and the merit or like of the school it doesn't necessarily matter as much as I thought it would, like when I was in like a junior or senior in high school. I feel like yeah, a lot of people stress over that way too much, and I don't know if I mean my case is unique because I didn't really care that much per se, but like I remember like my friends would like stress about, oh, I need to go to UT or I need to go to A&M, or like people would like be rejected from UT and then they'd be like, oh, I have to go to A&M. Like, I don't think that really matters. Like at the end of the day, like the diploma like shows like how hard you've worked for it, right?
Well, I think that's all good, and that's I think I'm not saying I disagree. I think I do agree, but I think the conversation around that is, I think many will be like, well, it's because you went to UTD and you didn't go to
we're biased,
right
Yeah.
X school,
You
but
weren't smart enough to go to UT,
or even without that, it's I think the question that I have that's going to be really helpful is then what in your experience, what is really important? Like what is the important thing as it pertains to the school that you go to? Because I think that's kind of what everybody wants to know, right? What is the thing that you should really think about? What is a primary thing?
Yeah.
How do you maybe narrow down from 15 things that you're considering, from location to this, to that, to the, and so on and so forth, and then really narrow it down to one or two things that really are at the core of what really, I think is going to contribute significantly or more so than the others to, a wonderful college experience. And, I think that's kind of really what we want, because I think you could talk about you never know what a school's going to do, you never know what and that's, but even then that's hearsay and you're only saying it because you've seen it. But I think beyond the academics and even beyond maybe the program, beyond the reputation, what are the things that you should be looking for or considering? How would you help people to make that decision? If they have a whole bunch of choices. Now, I think a lot of people are in a situation where, like you guys maybe wasn't, and you guys are kind of interesting in that you guys really only had one or two choices, but there are people out there who have significant choices, right? Lots of choices. We're talking 5, 6, 7, 8 different schools. How do you help these folks narrow it down to really be able to kind of undo some of that stress, but also to help them to best make that decision? What would you... So like if a high school senior came up to you and said, hey, I have all these things, how would you help them using your experience and what you know now about college?
I am one of those crazy people that would suggest, first of all, do you see a potential for spiritual growth in that campus? Are there good churches or places where you can get plugged in on campus ministries that will point you to God, people that will love on you to tell you that you're doing certain things wrong? Like I think that was for me, looking back, something that I wish I prioritized more my freshman year going into UT Dallas, like a quiet, very, very peaceful campus, kind of boring at times, but then like within that mundaneness, it was like, dude, like what am I doing? Like am I just here to just flirt and get grades and hopefully get out alive, or is there something more to these formulative years for me?
I'm like in the same boat too. Like freshman year for me, like I wasn't focused on I wasn't focused on school. I wasn't focused on getting good grades. I wasn't focused on my relationship with God. Because I was, away from home, like away from Houston, in Dallas, like I was like by myself, and I had that freedom. I feel like I was just focused on, like I have this, like freedom, right? Where I don't have to, I don't have a curfew. I don't have, I don't have someone who would get angry or like get mad at me for like staying up all night or something like that. And so like I abused that so much because I didn't like there was no one, no one was telling me, hey, you need to go to sleep, or hey, like no one was reminding me of like with that freedom, like you need to have like discipline. And I had no discipline at all, and so like I was focused on like I want to be in a relationship and stuff like that. But I think after the first semester, like I failed one of the easiest classes that like any business student could had to take, and that was like the intro to like everything. And so after failing that, like I had to reflect and be like, I need to focus on school. Why am I not focusing on school? Why is everything like falling apart basically, like right in front of my eyes? And I came to the realization that I needed to have first a relationship with God, and have that solid foundation before anything else would fall into place. And so that second semester, like I became I was part of a campus ministry, and like I feel like that's when like I grew like exponentially, like a lot more compared to like when I was in high school. And so like looking back now, like what I would tell myself and like other high school, like my high schoolers, would be like prioritize like school, but also prioritize spiritual growth as well. Like find out more about like the location besides like the university, but also like churches around the area, and also campus ministries as well. And so yeah, I mean, definitely spiritual growth and spiritual some place that will harvest and help you grow.
Yeah, because I feel like that's not something that many families and students and parents are emphasizing. And it's kind of, I think, the idea of you can get all the best grades and do all these things and all those things that you want, but if that's failing, then I think, as you said, Richard, a lot of other things will kind of fall along with that. And so yeah, Eunice, you've been at the same church since you got there, right? From my understanding.
Yes.
Yeah, and what helped you kind of choose that church, and what was like that kind of a thing? Was that something that you I think that was something that you were thinking about and you were considering a little bit? So no, because I think that's another question that I think a lot of people have, is like, how do I choose the church that that I went to, and what are some of the things? Because I think, and that's a question I think, at least for Asian Americans, that we don't also handle. And I think in our area, that's one of the things that's a very interesting thing. Like if you go to Austin, there are, I think, a host of Korean churches. I think also in Dallas, there's actually a good number of Korean churches or Asian American churches. If you stay in Houston, you might stay with us. But A&M is kind of a different ball game, and even UTSA is a different ball game, because when you get there, you don't have the kind of people. That's my cell phone. I apologize. When you get there, and that's my wife calling. But when you get there, there aren't churches that look like ours, or the ones that maybe you come from, and so those are some of the difficulties, and you kind of have to navigate that, and that can be a pretty harrowing experience. And so I know I've talked to a lot of different people about how they choose churches, and then also when you go from a place where you never had to pick a church, you just went to the church that your parents went to, and that was always your home, and then for the first time you have to actually pick a church. Like how do you do that? And so if spirituality is a huge component of what you're doing, and how you choose, then yeah, how do you then? What are some of the things that you guys looked for, or what are some of the things that you guys considered in the churches that you went to? Because obviously, I think for at least the three of you here, there were multiple choices, and there were multiple choices for you. And so, how did you kind of navigate those waters? Because I know that's a difficult one for sure.
For me, how I decided to go to the church that I'm at right now, KCD. I looked up to this one guy. He was a senior when I was a freshman, and really helped me grow spiritually and just as a person as well. But I just looked up to him, and so I decided to just go where he went, and I feel like God was using him so that I would go to church, because at the time I wasn't going to church. And so I feel like, it's been difficult at times, like a lot of stuff, like crazy stuff happened in that in the 3 years that I've been in Dallas. But but I feel like he's constant, like God is constantly using people to bring me back, and just to have that firm foundation in the church. But for me, it was mostly community, because here in Houston, you have like a whole bunch of people, right? But going to Dallas, being alone, basically, it was a completely different scenario for me, because going from having a bunch of people around you to only like a handful of people, it was extremely difficult to navigate and adjust to. And so community, and then on top of that how the sermons are going, and how people worship and stuff like that. Especially going from Houston to Dallas, I felt like community was something that I wanted to focus on, because I know, in personal experience, community has always been something that's that's always shown me how this is what a church is supposed to be, right? This is how one way God is answering my prayers for being alone, and fighting this battle by myself, kind of thing.
For me, when I was starting to choose churches, the two main things I was thinking about was I really wanted to be a part of a church that was characterized by people that were able to be really honest with their relationship with God, characterized by a rawness.
Genuine.
Yes. Yes. Able.
Rawness. Yeah.
Rawness.
Genuineness. Yeah.
Yeah, I really desired that, because I feel like I desired depth, I think, more than just people that, we know, oh, I follow God, but I wanted to see it at its core, kind of. And so that was a big consideration. And another thing that I really wanted to look for was a church that was so desperately reliant on God to move and lead that church, and not just these are all the programs that we have. It didn't need to be perfect, but just that reliance on God to really build that church. And so I think my experience choosing an actual church was a little different than most people. And it sounds cliche, but it kind of found me rather than me finding the church I go to right now, because I go to a church called AKPC in Austin, and honestly, I didn't know it existed when I first arrived in Austin, but I like randomly was in a room where people were like inviting students to this Korean ministry, and I was like, yeah, I've never heard of it, probably not go. But I'm usually not someone who just goes and tries to experience new things. But I decided to just go to their welcome event, even though I knew nobody there. And then when we got into groups called house churches, I didn't have one, obviously, because I was new, but someone just like invited me to come sit with this one group. And literally, as I was saying hi to them in the first 5 minutes, I just had a very clear, I don't want to say feeling, but just like I knew in my heart, like I just remember consciously saying to myself, like looking around and knowing, oh, I know these are the people that I'm going to be with for the next 4 years of my life. I just had a very strong kind of feeling in my heart. And so I was like, whoa, what is this? Like, I barely even met these people. But I was very interested. And so I decided to go, visit their weekly meetings. And then I went to the church service, and it was honestly a lot like what I had known back at home. Just the fact that there's a Korean adult congregation, and then there's the youth side of things and a college English ministry side of things. I really just liked that. It was something I was comfortable with, but also in a place where obviously I don't know anyone. I'm very easily overwhelmed and very uncomfortable, but I saw myself just so free and feeling accepted and welcomed, and felt like, it was a place where I could really enjoy, just doing life with these people. And then,
Yeah. No, I think I love how you guys were describing that, like for you, Richard, you leaving Houston, leaving every, your friend group, everything that was comfortable for you to go to a small school in Dallas and almost start over there. And that theme is very similar to what Eunice had in Austin whenever she transitioned to go to school at UT. But even still, despite that, it's almost as if you guys met the right people. Like you meeting, is it Jonathan?
Yeah.
Is it Jonathan, yeah. Meeting like kind of like an older like brother that could like, that you admired, and that was obviously walking with God, and you respected that and following his footsteps there. And for Eunice, like having this house church thing kind of fall into your lap for that. I think that's all. A lot of it, I think all of that is attributed to God's providence. Like God prepares people, God prepares events to occur in a way that, we are met. We are kind of, we meet the right people. Yeah. I don't know. For me, it was different because I grew up in the Dallas area and I went to school in the Dallas area. And so for me, what I would like to talk about more so a transition is when I moved to Galveston. I know a lot of people at Arche Ministries is familiar with kind of the lifestyle that I live with. Going to school Monday to Friday on the island, and then driving an hour and a half to Katy to basically live with my pastor and eat all his food and spend time with his kids and basically enjoy all the luxuries, living the life of I don't even know, a freeloader. Is that what you guys call it now? Freeloader? I don't know, but it's good. Gojis, yeah. Shout out to all the refugees. Yeah. But yeah, like that transition for me was kind of similar to y'all's. It's like kind of leaving everything that was comfortable for me to be in a place where I really didn't have anybody. It's what I considered to have nobody. And looking for a church was really just finding a church and choosing to serve there. I had this misunderstanding before that I was going to church hop for the first semester of PT school, but then talking with Pastor Don, who was a guest speaker at our summer retreat, really convicted me to be like, you know what? Like, if KCPC is going to be, KCPCH is going to be the church, then I'm going to commit to it 100%. I'm going to dive in head first. And all of that was even before I came to this understanding that I would continue this process of 5 days at school, 2 days away from school, something that I've done since the freshman year at UT Dallas. But all to say the least, like, it was great, and it was something God had orchestrated for me on my behalf, even more than just making good grades and becoming a good physical therapist. I think what God really desired for my life, and I can also say for Richard and for Eunice's life, is that we would serve faithfully wherever God has called us to be, and that we are growing and we are being challenged every single day to be more like Jesus. And so, yeah, like, I think just to wrap it all up, one final question for anybody to take is, if you guys could go back in time and do it all over again, would you change anything? And if so, why?
Knowing what I know now, probably not, because I know, like, you know, everything that led up to, like, my decision to go to UTD and, like, everything that's happened at UTD, like, that's all been part of God's plan. Like, nothing else, like, no one else, and, like, not my will alone, but through His will, right? Like, no one else could have orchestrated such a, you know, like, a course of events that would lead me to the person I am today, and, like, continuously, like, building me up to become, you know, more like Jesus, and, you know, into becoming more of a faithful believer and servant. And so, yeah, for me, no.
For me, I think I wouldn't change the way things played out, but I think I would have wanted a different mindset as I went in, understanding that, you know, we have so many choices to be making in this time period of our life. We get to choose what school we want to go to, what major we want to study, and, you know, what churches we're going to attend. But I think instead of putting so much emphasis in the choices, I think understanding at the end of the day, my life is really in the hands of God. He's really going to lead me where I need to be, and I'm going to be able to, you know, do what, like, God intends to do with my life. I'm going to be able to do that whatever I study, or, you know, wherever I go, and just understanding that, you know, my spiritual life and, like, my actual, like, what I live out, like, they're not separate things. It's really connected, and understanding His providence in the way I am going to actually live my life, that really would help me to, not just be so stressed out about all the, like, single decisions, but really trust in God's faithfulness, and really be open to, you know, a variety of choices. I don't think it's a bad thing to go in not knowing exactly what you want to do. It's okay to have a good idea of maybe 3 things you're interested in, and being like, honestly, I don't know if I'm going to end up in this one place. But trusting that in the end, God will still lead me, and, you know, I will let me rephrase that.
No, it's okay, yeah.
Think I would know that my life is going to be good because, let me rephrase that.
Like, everything's gonna be okay because God is in control, right?
My life isn't good because of the things I actually experience, like just because I study this one major, or, like, just because I go to this church, but, like, it's the fact that, you know, I follow God. Like, that's the thing that brings, you know, life to the party.
So then how do you, one final question, and maybe we can't answer this with the time that we have left, but while I don't disagree and while I do actually agree with just about everything you're saying, on some levels then it kind of doesn't matter where you go, but it does matter where you go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so how do you then thrive, right? I think that's the question for me is then within the realm of choices, and I think every person is different, and whatever your realm of choices are, how do you thrive? How do you make, and this is a thing that I think is applicable to anyone that's in college now, anyone who's choosing a college now, or whether you're in grad school, like how do you thrive? What are the things that you need to look for that's going to really help you to thrive? And, you know, I think that's kind of the age-old question. I think for me, if I can get, I guess maybe pastorally for a second, but it's just, I think you have to know yourself, and I think you have to understand like the kind of person that you are. You have to understand, I think, what helps you thrive now. So I would look at like what helps you thrive in the current position that you're in right now. And then kind of take the good and the bad of it. If you need a structured environment where people keep you accountable because they're your friends and they're kind of on you and you're kind of that kind of person, then I would suggest, why would you go somewhere where you're not going to know anyone and people who don't know you and people who won't be able to speak into your life? Like, I think that's something that you got to consider. If you're a person who has always been kind of can adjust to anything on the fly, then I think, that might be something that you consider. But I think those are the types of things that I think that I'm hearing from all of you. And then having known many of you for a number of years now, I think that's, I think, the thing that I think I would hope to be able to stress is, if you know yourself, then some of you know, like, we didn't ask this question, but some people need to stay home.
Yeah.
Because family really means a lot, even though they may know you or whatever. But some people need to stay home because they need that touch, they need that reminder, they need that like sensitivity and that closeness. Whereas because even though maybe you want to go ahead and spread your wings and do whatever, you go to a brand new place and you're just going to be super homesick. So I think you need to know that about yourself. Other people, I think, need the adventure, and some people need kind of that newness and
space,
and they're gonna
independence a bit.
right, and they're gonna sour if they have the same old kind of a thing. And so I think that awareness, I think, is really what it is. But then we place all the emphasis on all these things that we can't control, like the major that you choose that you won't know whether you keep, or the locale in the city. No one knows whether they can live in a big city unless you've lived in a big city your entire life. And so it's really hard to know, and it's really difficult to understand, kind of in those parameters, or like, the quote unquote, like all these things. And so it's like, I think those are the things that I hope that people are understanding of through y'all's stories, is that there's so many things and so many factors that change, I think, from beginning to the end. But the thing that won't change is who you are, or how God has shaped and made you. And so if you understand those things a bit better, then hopefully that will give you the impetus to be able to thrive. Like, John, if we talk about you, the reasons why I think I asked you what I asked you is because I know that you've always grown up in a very stable, consistent church home that you've been accountable to, that you've committed to, and that you've served. And so for you to do the opposite was literally it's a fish out of water. Like, it's putting you in a place that you wouldn't be able to do well, things of that nature. And so knowing those things, I think that's how we understand how we're going to thrive. And those, I hope, are the things that we consider most. And that's why I always say, like, where is God calling you? Because based on who you are and who God wants you to be, I think God will take you and help you to become the kind of the best person that you want to be. And I think, I've always said the major and the name of the branding and the diploma that you get, those things are very minor considerations in the long run of things. But in terms of who you are and understanding who you are and how you can best put yourself in a posture for God to help you to thrive most, I think is the question that I think, I hope that we're all asking ourselves, and then that we know ourselves. And then I think within this conversation, I think for me, having people that I think know each other well enough to be able to help you to do that, I think is really super important. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, it's such a good conversation. I almost hate ending it here with almost a disclaimer, but we understand that this is not indicative of everybody's experience. Right. Not everyone is going to go through exactly what Richard, Eunice, and also even Pastor, what we've gone through. And so this is not us saying that, we know what's best for you. Ultimately, God knows what's best for you, and we're trusting that He will work through kind of the mess of our lives to show us His beauty and His glory. And so, that's going to end it here. Please comment if you're on YouTube. Comment down below if you would love for us to talk about any other things. Or if you're not on YouTube and you're listening at another platform, to email us at rk kcpch@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. So long for now, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.